I'd like to welcome you to this study in the book of Galatians. Today we're in Galatians, the 5th chapter, and we're going to begin with verse number 6. Now let me just go back and let me just say this. Go back to yesterday's video and listen to it, because verse number 5 and verse number 6 run together. But let me just give you just a little bit of a review. In verse number 5, the Apostle Paul writes, "For we through the Spirit by faith are waiting for the hope of righteousness." What is Paul telling us? Paul is telling us that righteousness, and I believe that here he's not talking about the righteousness that we receive in Christ. He's talking about applied righteousness. A word that I would use is sanctification. But he's saying that it comes from the Spirit. It doesn't come from the work of the flesh. But he also said that it comes from the Spirit or through the Spirit, but it comes by faith. And then he talks about an expectancy. Now, there are several things that we expect from God. We apply our faith, and then we expect God to bring about healing, to bring about finances, to bring about our salvation, to bring about heaven, to bring about the salvation of our loved ones. There are a lot of things that we expect God to do. But here, the Apostle Paul is talking about something that we receive by faith. We walk it out by faith, and we wait for it, we look for it, we long for it. And what is it? It is righteousness. Righteousness applied to our lives. And then he goes on into verse number 6, and he says this, "For in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision means anything." What's he saying? The Apostle Paul is saying, whether you're circumcised or not circumcised. And again, I'm not just talking about the physical act of circumcision. It's talking about trusting in circumcision. Or he uses the word uncircumcised. In other words, trusting in uncircumcision. And what's Paul saying? He's saying those things don't mean anything. And what means anything, that word in the Greek language, it tells us that it's nothing. Nothing is accomplished. You see, nothing that we receive as believers changes in our lives. You know, when I became a believer in 1970, that's a long time ago. But you know what? There were things in my life that were atrocious. There was bondages in my life that were atrocious. And you know what? Some people would say, "Now, Leon, you need to stop smoking. You need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing that." And you know what? They were pointing me to self-righteousness. And you know what happened? There were times where I just threw up my hands and I said, "You know what, Lord, I'm hopeless." You know what was happening? My faith was being taken away. We need to understand that it's not outward things that cause us to be right before God. It's not being circumcised or not being circumcised. Do you understand? That's what the Apostle Paul is trying to get across to us. That outward things do not make us holy. That outward things do not cause us to walk in righteousness, in true sanctification. You see, what causes us to be holy is saying, "Lord, I depend on you to take away these things from my life, to take away bitterness, to take away lust, to take away pride, to take away anything that's not pleasing to you. Lord, I depend on you. I rest on you. That's the rest of faith. Years ago, I was in South Africa. I preached a church service, and afterwards they had this beautiful, they call them a braai set up. It's an outdoor cookout, which is like 90% meat and 10% potatoes. Not very good for your health, probably, but I sure do enjoy them. And they said, Leon, you're the guest speaker. You get to go first. So I go first, and I get my little bottle or my little glass of tea, I think it was, and I sit down with my plate, and I'm sitting on one of those plastic chairs, and that thing folded on me. What was I doing? I was trusting that chair to keep me up. You know, I've traveled all around the world since then. And you know what? Every time I see one of those plastic chairs, I do an inspection on that plastic chair. Is this thing going to hold me up or is it not? Sometimes I go find another chair. Sometimes I think, well, this chair will hold me up. What am I doing? I'm trusting in it. Maybe today you're going through a time in your life where you're doing a lot of self-inspection. And you're saying, how come I'm not overcoming like I should be? How come I'm not overcoming like so-and-so who just got up in church and gave this flowery, beautiful, powerful testimony of overcoming? Let me just say this to you, the last part of verse number 6. But faith working through love. Faith working through love. What do you need to do? You need to sit down and you need to say, God, I'm going to be obedient to whatever you ask me to do, but I'm trusting you to work this thing out in my life. And I'm trusting that you're going to work this thing out in my life because I know that you love me. You love me. You don't want to see me in bondage. You don't want to see me in bondage to the law, and you don't want to see me in bondage to sin. And because you love me, I am completely submitting, completely giving of my life over to you. I am working these things out. I am becoming a spiritual person by faith because I know that you love me. Thank you for watching us. Join us again next week as we continue our study in the book of Galatians.